as we can. Caroline, firstly, in terms of the opening of hospitality, we've seen non-essential retail open, we've seen close contact open, but I think there are so many variables into the hospitality industry in terms of what people can do, because opening up has got a bearing to alcohol and alcohol service and food service, and the two are linked together. You've got customers and numbers at tables, and so we've got some guidance. Let's just go through one of the basics of that guidance first of all. If somebody has a restaurant, the chances are they've got license to serve alcohol. The bearing of serving alcohol kicks in with a substantial meal. Can you just take us through that very slowly?
Yeah, this was one of the areas that I think it was fair to say we wanted to be able to give some really good guidance on what actually constitutes a sort of standard, a main meal, a substantial meal. And actually, we've written it down into the guidance that's been prepared and is on Govt.je now to be able to read. But it's understanding things. It's almost looking from a prosecution backwards point of view. If you had to stand in front of the judge and you said that you'd served this, do you think that it would be fair to say that that justifies a substantial meal? So we've written the guidance with that in mind, and it includes things such as if you're a person who likes tapas style meals, or several starters rather than a main course, then if you were to order a couple of starters for yourself and a side, then that would be a substantial meal. That would see you through your evening until the following breakfast, or it would see you through from lunch until evening. So it's that sort of consideration. If it was tapas itself, 3 dishes of tapas is a sort of fairly common recommendation for an individual. If somebody wants more, then obviously quite happy to have more, but it's specifying it in those sort of areas and that sort of framework. So it's been designed to be able to give you sort of practical guidance. What it's not, and I think that's also critically important to understand, is, for example, the UK Scotch egg that obviously made all the national news. If you're handed a Scotch egg in a piece of napkin or something like that, and you sort of shove it into your face with pint in hand, that can't be classed as a substantial meal. That's not requiring washing up, it's not requiring any knives and forks or cutlery. Whereas if you were to do the same Scotch egg and you were to actually serve it with, a nice bowl of salad on the side that's dressed, where you've got something to go with coleslaw, or making it into pickles and that side of things, almost like a ploughman's lunch as opposed to just a Scotch egg. That's the difference between the two areas. It's about understanding and recognising that a packet of crisps is never going to be a substantial meal. A bowl of chips, although I might have been guilty of it being a Friday night tea, is not classed as a substantial meal. So although you might get requests for that, you need to explain to the individuals that to help you stay open and to help you meet your needs and your responsibilities, that actually it can't just be a plate of chips. It can be a plate of chips with something else. That's the sort of differentiation between those bits.
Okay, it seems like there's two sides to this. One is being reasonable, fair, and playing the game, I think, is a term that both Simon and I have used, and the other is the legal requirement. Let's just talk about playing the game to start off with. Simon, it's something that the JHA and ourselves at Chamber have been saying for some time. Really important that people follow the spirit of this as much as anything else and make sure that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, completely, Murray. I think the point that we've both said is, if you're trying to find a loophole to make this work for you, then you're going against the spirit, the ethos of what's being said. The guidance is quite clear, and if you're there trying to pick up on things going, oh, could I get away with this, then you really should be stopping there and not trying to push that line.
Okay, thanks for that. Ruth, I want to bring you in as head of policy here. You've had the unenviable task of tiptoeing through the legal niceties of what constitutes a meal and when you can serve alcohol. It's pretty complicated, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The law wasn't necessarily designed to be able to deal with situations like this. But what the law says, and the law is very clear about this, is that alcohol can only be served with a meal, and the definition of a meal in law is breakfast, lunch, or dinner or equivalent, i.e. it is clearly a meal, and that will be the legal test that's used. It's not a snack. and it is really important that all businesses can support their customers to understand this.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to add to that afternoon tea, that substantial meal of sandwiches, scones, cream tea, and possibly a glass of bubbly where it would kick in. Of course, if you were just having a cup of tea, it wouldn't matter what you have. We just need to make that clear. If you're not having alcohol, then you can have a packet of crisps if you want, because you can go to a cafe and have a biscuit. So this is just related to alcohol, and I think we can just clear that up fairly quickly. We've got questions coming in. I know Simon's been manfully volunteered to answer some of those questions as they come in written form, but I'm just going to reiterate them so other people can see them. Can we confirm that masks need to be worn until food and drink is served at the table? Not ordered, and put back on once food and drink is finished. So you're sitting in the restaurant or in the pub, or where you're getting your food. You're waiting for your food to arrive. Masks need to be worn until the food and the drink is served. That seems fairly clear, and I'm getting a nod from Caroline on that. That seems right.
Yeah, correct, Murray. It's as straightforward as that. There is an expectation that unless you are with your drink and with your meal and you're actually using those dishes, then yeah, it's about limiting the risk of vapor spread as much as possible. So yeah, it's about wearing masks for that, going to the toilet as well, just making sure. Not as I had a complaint recently where someone said they went to the toilet in their mask, and I thought, exactly what do you mean? It means wearing your mask when you get up and go to the toilet.
Thank you for that. Gavin, yes, yeah, good one though. Gavin says, where do we stand with no more alcohol orders being taken once the last plate of food has been cleared? People might not know if they want a dessert or not. You know, oh, I'll think about that. Maybe I'll have a dessert in a little while. So there is that nuanced area there, and let's just be clear. When can people have alcohol, and when can they not have alcohol when they're going in for food? I think, Ruth, we've got to come back to you on this one.
Yes, okay, so the law is quite clear that alcohol can only be served with food, and that means that when the food is being ordered or when the food is being consumed. So appreciating that people may have finished their main course, once they finish their main course, if they have not already ordered dessert, they cannot order any more alcohol unless they are ordering a dessert alongside that alcohol. So it is, you know, there is not an opportunity to order more alcohol once you've finished eating.
We'll be clear about this, Caroline. This is about not overtly, but limiting the amount of alcohol consumption so that you can have enough. If you wish to have a drink, you can have a drink with your meal to enjoy that. But this is not about going somewhere so that you consume as much alcohol as you can.
Absolutely. We are still opening up. We're still getting through, having gone through the awful situation in November and December, the number of cases and the effect that had. This is a balance of being able to help people get out of the houses and actually see one another in a sit down, warm, although this weekend was beautiful, warm setting, and be able to enjoy a meal together with alcohol. But that's not the focus of the drink, of the get together. The get together is not about consuming alcohol. It's about enjoying a meal, about getting out and being able to see your friends in a more controlled fashion than being able to just see each other in one another's houses. And the limiting alcohol is to try and prevent the getting huggy side of things as the evening goes on in that respect. So it's the balance of that. It's a recognition that we are not in normal times yet, and I know that numbers are going down, but it's just hanging fire and being able to support that process going through and being able to get people into your restaurants and into your cafes and actually seeing one another again in that environment that can be controlled, where the masks are a critical part of being able to try and help prevent the increased spread again.
I get the sense that almost every business is different, and everyone will have their own particular quirks and ways of doing things. A question from Carlos here: in a hotel after a meal, can the guest have an alcoholic drink at a different table? So now we're talking about in a hotel? Are we talking about residents in a hotel, those who are staying over for a long weekend? Where do we sit with serving alcohol to guests who are staying at a hotel? Ruth, I'm going to come back to you on this one. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So with regard to residential guests in a hotel, so those people who are staying the night, the rules are slightly different. So those people, when they're sitting in the food and drink premises, the kind of the restaurant in the hotel, those guests can continue to order alcohol and can continue to stay there past, so can order alcohol past 10 o'clock and can stay in the cafe or restaurant area in the hotel past 10:30 if they're residential guests, but they can still only order alcohol with a meal whilst they're in the food and drink premises on the hotel. But obviously, clearly those residential guests can then leave the food and drink area and can, for example, return to their room where they can order room service, which can include alcohol without a meal.
Okay, hope everyone got that one, but thank you very much for that. I'm going to sort through some of these because we are, and thank you to Simon once again for answering some of these quickly for those people, but I am just going to reiterate those for the benefit of other people that might have wanted to know. Can you confirm once a customer is sat with a menu, is he, she allowed to order a drink whilst deciding on what courses to order? I think Simon has quite clearly put here that drinks cannot be ordered or consumed until the food has been ordered. That's the state of play, isn't it? Food ordered first, then you can order a drink, but you must order your food first. It's no good just sitting there with a menu.
Yes, Mo, to be clear, you can order a glass of water or you can order a non-alcoholic drink, but you cannot order an alcoholic drink unless you're ordering the food.
Right, fine. Thank you. And there was another question here, which was, can an alcoholic drink be ordered and served as an aperitif before the meal order is taken in a traditional restaurant, or does the whole food need to be in place to order a drink? So again, it's a similar dress up of the same question there, Ruth. In terms of ordering a drink, yes, you could order an aperitif. Presumably, you've ordered your food first before doing so.
That's correct. You've got to order the food.
Thank you. And we're getting plenty of calls on all of this, and I think this is really good detailed information for staff to be able to know. You know, they're going to be going into this today and wanting to do the right thing. And Daniela asks, can the order of a meal be considered proof that justifies serving an aperitif whilst waiting for food? Also, after the meal, can we serve a liqueur once the table has been cleared? Okay, so let's talk table cleared at the end of the meal. I think we've identified that the proof that you've ordered your food is good for the aperitif, but in terms of clearing the table and a liqueur at the end of the meal, Ruth, where do we stand?
Okay, so the law requires you to, the law sets out that you can only order alcohol with a meal. If it is quite clear that the aperitif is part of a meal, so for example, if it's being ordered alongside coffee as a kind of an additional order once you've finished your dessert, that's absolutely fine. But what you cannot allow is for additional alcohol over and above what would be a standard acceptable aperitif with a coffee to continue to be ordered without food.
Thank you. Questions about meetings, and one for you, Caroline, here. If we host a corporate meeting in a boardroom for 10 people and the customers are physically distanced, do they need to wear a mask for the duration of their meeting?
I would encourage it. The reason is for the individuals, actually, if they have been in there for a period of time, then it reduces their risk of becoming direct contacts, but that's not required. It's just an encouragement from with my contact tracing hat on, as opposed to my this hat that I'm wearing this morning. So it's encouraged as good practice, and they should be doing it as part of their business continuity, but that's not the same as it being required. So if they're wearing their masks as they're coming into your establishment, as they're going into the meeting rooms, once they're in, sat down, they can remove their masks. But I always encourage that masks are worn. Certainly in contact tracing, our teams wear our masks, even though they're obviously regularly talking to individuals, unless they're properly sat down and away from other people. As soon as they go anywhere near to any of the desks, it's a mask on policy. So it's good practice to wear a mask, but that's different to it being a requirement. Mute.
Yeah, that was me again. Are things different? I'm there now. Are things different now compared to the reopening that we had in the summer of last year? Have we learned more from this? And I think have we learned the areas where behaviour didn't fit what we wanted?
So it's Ruth here. I think well, one of the major differences is that when we reopened kind of in the summer last year, we did not have the UK variant on the island, and the reality is, and that's something that we all need to consider as we move forward, is that we have a variant of COVID on the island which is far more transmissible, and so we have to factor that into all our decision makings around both the government of Jersey has to factor into its decision making around what is required in law and what is not required in law, but also every single business needs to factor it in to the way in which it practices and the way in which it adheres to legislation and guidance.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Sorry, Caroline, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just coming in on that as well. One of the things that we do have now is obviously the COVID Safe team, who you may have seen, who've already been out supporting non-retail and retail sectors, non-essential retail and essential retail sectors recently, about making sure that we're keeping the good momentum, the good training practices up over a longer period of time. So they're sort of acting as the critical friend and giving pointers where they can do, and that's something that's sort of new this time around. And please welcome them, because they're coming as friends, and they're coming to help you to try and stay open for those reasons, as Ruth mentioned.
Is it possible to get that COVID team to come in? There may well be a premise somewhere that's saying, yeah, this is great. There's a lot of guidance here. We've got a team of 10 who are waiting to serve. We just want to make sure we're doing everything the way we should be. So presumably there is a way of getting that COVID team to come in for your team.
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way is to actually email covidteam@govt.je, and that will help them make contact with you to be able to identify what's a good time for you. This is environmental health. It's different to that thank you, Simon. It's different to that in that this isn't about compliance with legislation. So it's not the unannounced visits that you'll have been used to from the environmental health team. It's very much get in touch with us, and it's at a time that's convenient for you. So it's a time where you can actually listen, spend time showing them what goes on, what you're doing, and being able to make any improvements if there are any recommendations to make. So it's very different to that sort of inspection, checking up on you type thing. It's very much about coming in to be able to talk through what you're doing. And yeah, the easiest option is to email covidsafe@govt.je. It's COVID team. Sorry, Simon. It's a team of 30 at the moment, and they are people who are contact tracers predominantly, so they're well skilled in being able to spot what the risks are to your staff as well, in terms of being able to help protect your team and help keep you open, so that if you do have an individual, if you do have an individual who does test positive for COVID, they're far less likely to actually result in you having to close your business because so many people have become direct contacts within your team. So it's things like that. They're looking at it from a different angle, I think, to what you might necessarily be looking at for yourselves.
Thank you. Simon, one for you. Once the order has been placed, can alcohol be consumed in a different area than the allocated table? What's your thoughts on that? Because again, this is looking at the different situations of different venues, and in the hotel environment, it's very often that orders are taken in one place and then you go to your table in another area. So do you have a view on that one?
I think initially this was done when people were having that aperitif before the meal and sitting down. That isn't something we're really looking at this time. It is more directly to the table, and it does present a bit of an issue when it comes to adding in extra areas for the contact tracing. You would have to be aware if they are doing it, you have to log them into 2 separate areas. You'd have to do the full clean down with a 10-minute break in between. Personally, my suggestion would be move to one table. Don't move them from that table. It's a lot easier to make sure they're tracked going through that way. I don't think it's something I'd recommend at this stage.
And actually quite sensible to have people seated at one table so they're not moving through a restaurant a great deal of the time. I think we've talked about movement, so I think people get the logic behind all of that. We've got questions coming in, and thank you very much indeed for these. And I fear that we're going to get through so many questions, we're not going to get to the actual guidance itself and tiptoe through that. But let's deal with the questions, because these are the ones that people really want to know. What is the situation with a hotel resident purchasing and or consuming alcohol in their room after 10:30, when they whether they purchased it on the premises or brought alcohol with them? So that's an interesting one. They're staying overnight, they're having that staycation long weekend, they've brought a bottle of bubbly with themselves, or hopefully they're going to be buying it from the hotel themselves. What's the situation when they're in their room? Ruth, are they free to consume whatever they want in their own hotel room?
Yes, so the way in which we've treated hotel guests is that, to all intents and purposes, when they're in their hotel for the night, that's actually their home for the night. So in the same way we don't reach into people's private homes, we're not reaching into people's bedrooms in hotels. So for the time being, we have not brought in any kind of legal restrictions on the consumption of alcohol in a hotel bedroom. However, if this turns out to be a source of problem, because we get outbreaks associated with people consuming large quantities of alcohol within hotel bedrooms, we may need to look at this again in legislation. I think the thing that's really important, and this is a challenge for everyone who runs a hotel, is that there then becomes a requirement on them to start understanding and enforcing what's going on in hotel bedrooms. Because the second that people start to party and invite other people who may be staying elsewhere in hotel into their bedrooms, you massively increase the risk of having a cluster or spread of COVID that will be coming out of one of your hotel rooms and is therefore damaging to the reputation of the hotel. So by law, we haven't restricted it, but the caution is required if you've got tiply guests who are fraternising with other tiply guests in their bedrooms.
Okay, thank you. In terms of mini bars, mini bar service and mini bar fridges are absolutely fine in a hotel.
That's correct.
Good. Okay, thank you. So lots of questions that came in from Tim there. Hopefully we've answered those. Can we have advice on the service of room service for hotels? Is service allowed? Yes. Time restrictions? No. Packaged drinks? That's fine. Mini bars? Fine. I'm just going through these to make sure we've answered them all. And gifted drinks in bedrooms, prepaid and allowed? They are allowed. So there we go. Thank you, Tim, for your series of questions. What happens if someone orders a drink when eating a dessert or a meal and has finished by the time it is served? Just want to try and get my head around that. What happens if someone orders a drink when eating a dessert or a meal and has finished it by the time it is served? I think by the time the food is served. Thoughts on that one? Who hasn't spoken for a while? Caroline. Simon. Go on, Simon.
Yeah, I think it's a nice, easy one. The guidance says you can order drink while you are either consuming or ordering food. So provided the drink is ordered at that stage, you're okay to consume it after.
Right, thank you for that. Is there any additional guidance on the same customers returning to the venue after having lunch or dinner? This is an interesting one because this actually came up in some conversations that we had, Caroline, in terms of, if the same customer comes back later in the day, they come back later in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a restriction on the same customer coming back. The only advice, and that's the advice in I think any scenarios. If they left very, very happy and they come back even more happy, then it's about the impact of that individual on your business. But if they've gone away, if they've turned up for lunch and they've gone away for a nice walk or kayak or whatever they've done, and they come back to you for dinner, that's absolutely fine. That's not a problem.
Okay, I would just want to go to a question that Daniela has asked here and go to Simon on this one. Can guests who are not staying overnight but sharing a table with residents stay over after 10:30? So can guests who are not staying overnight but share a table with residents stay over after 10:30? Simon, this goes into some fairly basic rules on hotel guests and non-hotel guests. Over to you.
No, simple as it's a loophole that would allow people to do it. That's not the ethos of the guidance out there, and what it says clearly is it's those who are staying overnight who are allowed to stay on past that point. No one else is. If you're not residing in the hotel, you must leave the premises by 10:30.
Right, thank you. Thomas says, so the guidance that resident guests cannot invite or have other guests with them in their room, as the guidance seems to read, the rule of 10 applies here. So the guidance says rules of 10 collecting, but actually what we're saying is no parties in rooms, no inviting other guests to your hotel room, because we then get into the party scenario. Ruth, this is guidance rather than law, but this is an area that I think there's a little bit of concern about. The thing with staycations is that everybody knows everybody in Jersey, and the chances are you're going to know other people in the same hotel. So once the bar service is stopped, the temptation is always going to be there for people to say, well, we've got a mini bar, let's go and crack that open.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a real area of difficulty for business owners because they will need to have some oversight to the extent they can do of what's happening in individual people's bedrooms. And at the end of the day, the rule of 10 applies in law, not in guidance. And if there are more than 10 people crammed into a room, they are breaking the law and committing a criminal offence. Right.
We don't want people breaking the law and committing a criminal offence. That's for certain. So the answer is don't do it. And if you're the hotel, please stop it, or at least try and stop it. How do the new rules, and this comes in from Emma. Thank you, Emma, for the question. How do the new rules work for private members clubs who allow members in and not members of the general public? We hold all the information on all of our members, so contact tracing is always available and is kept up to date daily. Are we able to keep a 2-meter distance between, we are, I beg your pardon, able to keep a 2-meter distance between all members. So is there any difference with a private members club to that from a public bar, a restaurant, hotel?
There's no difference in law unless it is a private members club that provides accommodation, in which case it is the same as if it was a hotel in law. But if it is a private members club, which is a food and drink premises only, then the same rules apply.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. Can we just clear up mask wearing? Because I wanted to go on to that, because I think it's rather important that we talk about mask wearing. What are we expecting from staff to be wearing masks at all time? I heard that and I read that in the guidance, and I think it's worth just reiterating the mask wearing because it's important that customers get that confidence, but it's important that staff realise their responsibility. Caroline.
And it's very much a legal responsibility as well. The only exemption is staff that are working in the kitchen that don't have that face-to-face interaction with customers. And that, I think, is fairly obvious in terms of you don't want to accidentally set fire to your chin because you're wearing a mask. So that's the only exemption. And even in the kitchen, if you've got somebody coming in to service your refrigeration units or do anything like that, whilst that person is present in your building, in your business, you have to wear a mask at all times at that point. And so the exemption for kitchen area also isn't included at that stage. So if you've got somebody coming in, you have to wear a mask at that point as well. And the other part of that is that there are no exemptions. So if, sorry, for everyone outside of that scenario. So if you've got a member of staff that cannot wear a mask for whatever reason, then you need to think about what role they can actually perform within that business that actually takes them away from that customer facing role. There isn't an exemption for them, only for the customers.
Okay, no exemption. It is where it is. And I think that the systems and protocol for deliveries and for people coming into your business, because you've got customers coming in through the front door, and you've got deliveries, maintenance, supplies, and right now there'll be an awful lot of that coming in through the back door of these places, rightly so, because they need to stock up and they need to do all of that. So all of those protocols and those systems need to be sort of really drilled into all of those staff, don't they?
It does indeed. It's a mixture of training, but also staff members being able to pull each other up on if they're not wearing masks when they ought to be doing. And it's difficult at first, as it is with introducing any new initiative. And I know that food industries have had to do a lot of that over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But it's about making sure that you are giving them the training and that they understand that the reason for this is to try and keep the business open, to keep people safe, and to be able to keep Jersey going, ticking along as we are doing at the moment.
Simon, the hospitality industry is pretty good at these protocols. They've been doing it, as Caroline said, for an awful long time. Food, health, safety, it's what they do, and it's what their business is based on. You're fairly confident that that people, I mean, just by looking at the amount of people that have joined this very much at short notice guidance briefing, you're fairly confident that the majority of these are going to have this really in their head. But it is about having an organised system, isn't it?
Completely. And I think what we saw last time, and I expect to see again this time, is the majority of our members have gone above and beyond with the guidance out there. The issue was only ever a couple of small or a couple of businesses who seemed to try and push the rules beyond where they should have been last time. But we would hope that everyone is going to try and adhere this time. It's also, and Caroline's mentioned this before, if you see businesses who aren't adhering and they may be struggling to work with the guidance, her team is there to be able to come and assist people into implementing what they should be doing on the premises. So it's worth contacting them if you see somebody who may not be following it as well as they should be, or may not be aware of all the rules.
COVID team at gov.je. There we go. Every time we're just getting it in there. Let's come back to here's an interesting question. Can you stay overnight in a hotel with someone from another household? I've no idea what you're suggesting, but it's a question that's valid. If two people come from different households, can they stay overnight in a hotel together?
They can in law. We'd rather people try to avoid it as much as possible, because intermingling between different households is an area of risk, but it is not forbidden in law.
Very good. Christopher just points out, he said, it seems to have changed from last week in terms of kitchen staff having not being having to wear masks where they had to before. Is that a change?
It's double checking the legislation, and I'm sorry, I misspouted words last time. It's critical in all areas apart from the kitchen. So in the kitchen, you do have the flexibility to be able to not wear masks. What I would say is, if you are in the really lucky position of having a kitchen that's large enough for your staff to be able to work away from one another, if you've got a pastry chef or somebody who's not working around hot things, I do encourage wearing masks just to try and reduce that risk as much as possible.
Right, thank you very much. Back on the questions again. Is it only premises with a restaurant license that can open, or can a pub open without one and serve a meal teaming up with another business supplying food? This is an interesting one, and we've seen this, we saw this last time around. Let's talk about teaming up, and let's talk about you've got a pub, you don't have a kitchen, or you have a kitchen but you haven't used it for a long time, which is more likely the case. Caroline, you've got thoughts on this?
Yes, please don't use your kitchen after 20 years of it not being open and not actually having done any of your food safety training since the 1960s. This is not the time to start working out your gourmet chefing menu. And that's exactly why back in summer, it was about being able to partner up with other businesses. So if you're able to partner up with a food takeaway delivery service, then absolutely we'd support that, and would far rather you do that than try and dust down a kitchen. It takes quite an amount of work and effort and investment to be able to bring a kitchen back up to a serviceable standard. And it's probably, if you're changing direction, great, but now isn't the time to try and get around it that way. And that's why we've facilitated that ability to be able to team up with other businesses to be able to provide that food element for you. I would say check their Eat Safe rating before you choose to buddy up with them, because you still have ultimate responsibility if there's a food poisoning outbreak within your premises. So have confidence in their systems, make sure that you're not bringing in a risk that you weren't fully aware of. And yeah.
And Simon, I mean, this is environmental health. You've got to let them know, but also this is a great way of those food outlets who would have been catering for events to give them an opportunity to also operate as well, which is quite important.
Yeah, completely. We saw a number of very positive relationships built up last year, and it'd be great to see them going again. It complements two businesses. It allows them to both, get the best out of the current position, and we encourage it wherever it's possible. I reiterate what Caroline was saying there. Do make sure they're a venue which has got a decent Eat Safe rating, and do make sure you contact environmental health. It is just so they are aware you are serving food within your outlet.
Excellent, thank you. I don't envy you, Ruth, having to have gone through some of the policy and the law on this, because it really is a minefield of these. We're getting more questions coming in here. I'm assuming that ordering drinks in bulk while having a meal is against the spirit of what we're trying to do. I think that's fair. But unless there is an obvious attempt to bend the rules, can customers, for example, order 2 bottles of wine and ask for the second one to be served once the first one is finished? Does that seem reasonable, Ruth, or are we again getting to people not being in the spirit of this?
Well, if there are 6 people sitting around the table, one can imagine that you'll quite easily go through two bottles of wine. Or look at it this way, I would go through 2 bottles of wine at that point. So I think that that's entirely reasonable. But if there's only 2 people sitting at the table and they ask for 2 bottles of wine, I think there comes a point where that is not being reasonable, and that is deliberately trying to bend the rules. It's not illegal, but it is not reasonable. And this goes back to, what we keep saying, which I appreciate is very difficult, but actually, business owners will need to roll in where they think their behaviour of their customers is creating risk for everyone.
Right. This is. Sorry, Caroline, go back to you on this.
The other element as well is that don't forget that they can order drinks whilst they're consuming a meal. So if they are ordering a 3-course meal, and actually it's taking a nice lazy Sunday, and it's taking a while between the first course and the main course, if the 2 of them have consumed a bottle of wine between the 2 of them, it would be okay to order an additional bottle of wine for their main meal. But what you don't want is drunk and difficult to manage individuals within your restaurant. So that's the key balance as well.
That's very important. Simon, anything to add to this? Because again, this is going back to spirit of guidance, spirit of law, and everyone, customers, and more interestingly, I think the premises themselves, the venues, they want to be on the right side of this, because they don't want us to relapse back into a closure again. So it's actually in their best interest not to push things.
Yeah, I think there's 2 levels of responsibility we need to look at. Obviously, the businesses we're encouraging to be as close to the guidance as possible and the spirit of the guidance. But it's also remembering that there's a personal responsibility we need to encourage from our guests. They need to make sure that they are following the guidance, and again, the ethos or the spirit of the guidance, to make sure they're not breaching what these rules are in place for. The idea of sitting there and consuming multiple bottles, it's also, people are going to be judged. The public are going to judge. There will be posts made. There will be a lot of feedback coming from this starting up, and we need to make sure we are being held accountable for what we're doing. If it doesn't look good for someone to be sitting there ordering multiple bottles of wine to a table of 2 people, then don't do it.
Right, thank you for that. Are there areas that we haven't covered that you can see glaringly obvious within the guidance that we really should be talking about at this time? I'm just having a look through the guidance myself, and I should say that the guidance is available, and it's available on the Govt.je website. Caroline.
I think it's highlighting the 2 meters distancing. That's 2 meters between people sat at different tables, not 2 meters between tables. If you think about walking through a lot of the retail sector at the moment, you'll see sort of strips of plastic highlighting where you should queue, and a lot of those are exactly 2 meters apart from one another. What they've not taken into account is that people aren't half an inch thick. So when you're measuring out your tables, you're far better to actually do it in real terms. So if you got 2 people sat back to back, exactly how far away are those 2 individuals from one another? Sat in the chairs, sat slightly further back from the table because they're not yet eating at that point. It's taking into account that practical application of things, that it should be 2 meters between people, not between tables. It's just highlighting that part because that's slightly different to how it was written last year. And then the other side of that as well, the flip side, is if your business can't achieve that, then it's the recognition that the use of screens to help facilitate that can bring the distancing down. But if you are using screens, you have to, again, it's the business area, and the customers will see exactly what's going on and choose that and use that. And so if you're using screens, are they going up high enough? Are they of a sufficient material that actually makes it easy to clean? Are you creating yourself an absolute nightmare piece of work by introducing screenage that's not fit for what you actually wanted to achieve? So there's a lot of thought processes need to go into it beforehand, I think, if you are going to try and use screens as a means of bringing down the 2 meter requirements.
Really interesting what you say there, because in terms of the gap between tables, there will be restaurant areas, there will be dining areas right now, and there'll be someone there with a tape measure going, right, we've got 2 meters between that table and 2 meters between that table. Actually, the chances are it's more like 3 meters by the time you've put half a meter of seating and then half a meter of seating back to back. So that's quite a relevant thing to be saying, and I guess some will have overlooked that and say 2 meters between tables, which is effectively only a meter between customers. So I'm glad you've got that one clear for us. Just going back to masks, somebody anonymously has gone, are masks mandatory for customers even at alfresco tables? So in terms of serving alfresco tables, if people are not wearing masks, do they need to wear masks, yes or no?
The answer to that is yes. The customers have to wear masks while they're on the business premise, or on the food and drink business premises. If that alfresco area forms part of the business premises, they need to be wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm. In terms of serving tables, and this gets into the we hope no conflict between the customers and between those who are running premises, but effectively we're asking premises and the staff within those premises to make sure they're policing things within the guidelines. So if a guest refuses to wear a mask, can they be refused access to the premises?
Yes, it's entirely reasonable for a business owner to say that if the individual customer is not complying with the law or not complying with guidance, they will not serve the individual customer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And Caroline?
There are some people who have exemptions, but they should have a formalised document of being able to demonstrate that they're exempt from wearing a mask. Saying that they're exempt isn't really enough. They should have a lanyard, or they should have a little, so I'm doing a little credit card thing, to be able to demonstrate that they have got that exemption. That's the only time that it wouldn't be a mask wearing. But yeah, just with any other one, you're able to refuse service for somebody if they're not complying. And it's about tricks of how you communicate that information to people. They're helping you stay open by wearing masks. That's the whole reason for it. You're not being obnoxious or anything. You're trying to keep your business open, and by them being customers, they need to help you stay open.
Simon's been making sure that questions are getting answered offline in the chat boxes. So thank you for that, Simon. Just one you've just had in there. Do guests have to wear masks when walking around a hotel in public areas? Quite a simple one.
They do indeed. They need to wear masks in communal areas. A guest in a hotel only needs to not wear a mask when they are eating and drinking in the food and drink premises in the hotel, or when they're in their private bedroom. But when they're walking around in all communal areas, using lifts, sitting in the lounge, etc., they need to wear a mask.
Right, and I think we've just answered the question that's just come in. Can a member of staff have a medical exemption for not wearing a mask? They cannot have a medical exemption for not wearing a mask. They must be found a role, or in best efforts to find them a role which is not public facing. Am I right in answering that one, Caroline, like that? Is that the spirit of what we're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so no exemption. Right. Simon, I wanted to pick up with you on a couple of bits and pieces there. We were talking about refusing to serve customers that refuse to wear a mask. I mean, in any premises, and licensed premises particularly, you can refuse to serve anybody, can't you?
Yeah, you have that right under your license. It's part of it. If you feel someone's drunk, if you feel they're not going to be right for the premises. Previously, before we had the change with the data controller, collecting personal data. That's now law. We can take their data anyway, but you have the right to refuse someone coming into your premises. That's always been the case.
You've got the right to refuse anyone not to sell them something in a retail premises, come to think about it. So you know, it's your choice as the seller. It's just a deal between two people. Right, questions that have been coming in. Are cloth masks required, or can a member of staff just wear a visor? Visors, cloth masks, medical masks. Caroline, this is your area.
So the key thing is about cleanliness, which is, you know, environmental health's go-to word. With a visor, that's absolutely fine. You can use a visor, but you have to bear in mind that it's a full face visor. You can't have the ones that, for example, just cover the mouth and the nose going up, because as soon as you sneeze or you cough, it just goes everywhere. So it has to be a full face visor, but yes, that's absolutely acceptable. With cloth masks, again, so long as the cloth is of a thickness where you can't blow a candle out through it, then that's acceptable, but they do need cleaning quite regularly. And if you've got outside tables and things like that, imagine that the humidity is probably within that mask going to make it wetter and more disgusting far quicker than if you're in a dry indoors environment. So whilst there aren't prescribed turnover times for masks and things like that, you would expect them to get through a couple at least on an 8-hour shift realistically. So follow that sort of information, but a full face visor is absolutely okay. Equally, if somebody is trying to order and they're struggling to communicate with the staff member, then if the staff member needs to take their mask down to be able to help that communication and then put it straight back up again, that's acceptable in terms of that communication side with the member of the public. But the way of getting around that need is the full face visor as well.
Okay. Getting the message over is going to be very, very important for everybody. Simon, you mentioned something about social media, and actually people really need to be able to get the message over and actually lead from the front foot, don't they, as a business owner?
Yeah, I think this is going back to the point, the public are going to be scrutinizing our industry very, very heavily. So professional pages, personal pages, make sure you haven't got photos going up of people with masks down, hugging, breaking those sort of rules. Anything that can be, you might not even be breaking the rules, but it might appear that you are. Anything like that is going to cause our industry considerable problems. So just maybe have a bit of a filter on anything that does move itself into a public forum.
And talking about that public forum and getting advice for them, we've seen within the various industries that have opened up successfully, non-essential retail, close contact particularly, there has been plenty of markings on the floor, plenty of sense of one-way systems for direction for getting to facilities and getting to counters. The same presumably should follow within this industry, within hospitality as well. I'm right in thinking that is available, Simon?
Yes, we've sent a link out, and if anyone hasn't received it or needs to get it again, please do contact us. And that allows you to get all the signage, which is being done through Mailmate, I believe, and it's got all the details in. There's also some printable stuff, so you can print it in-house and take it down that way. but we would encourage putting up plenty of signage around your venue.
It is difficult because you want people to come out and have an experience and enjoy themselves. And I could be talking here about retail in exactly the same way. It's an experience where you want to go shopping. It's an experience where you want to go to sit out and eat and relax. And I guess that people are going to be a little bit tense to start off with. So it's finding that balance between making it frictionless and smooth, but at the same time, abiding by the rules. That's a tricky balance, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. And I think there are always going to be concerns in this early stages. One thing we are going to be encouraging, we're going to be doing some work on our social media, is to get people to look at midweek options. If you don't feel as comfortable going in when it might be in a slightly busier period, even with the guidance in place, pick a midweek option. It works great for the venues who are always keen to push business to that part of the week. And it provides a time when it might be slightly less busy within the venue, making you feel a bit safer if you have got concerns.
Right. Caroline, risk assessments, just making sure that people can run. I mean, they're opening today, or some are opening today. Some will be opening a little bit later and going through this. This was the first day and they didn't know about it until middle of last week. So people will be rushing to get ready, but making sure that they've got all the checklists done is quite important.
Yeah, trying to go through things in a logical way and using the checklist is a really good way of being able to just help your brain go through that requirement of what you need to do before reopening. One of the key things that it's worth thinking about early, if you've not already done so, and I am aware that the helpline was busy over the last few days, is to actually encourage your staff to take part in the workforce screening. And with the reopening of the sector, we aren't putting that restriction on you have to be on an 8-week cycle or anything. You can get a one-off test for you or your members of staff right now before you reopen, or before it gets busy at the weekend, because I know that there's a lot of people very keen to get back out again. It gives you that sort of peace of mind of understanding exactly why you are in that position, and that's literally just calling the helpline on 445566 or free phone, although the free phone, I'm not sure what that number is, but it is available on govt.je. But it's if you use the checklist, it goes through things in methodical areas and it takes into account the things that you might not have considered as part of your risk area. Legionella and the flushing of taps, if you've not used your kitchen for a couple of months, that's a key risk in Jersey. We're a warm island anyway, so it breeds quite happily. So it's making sure that you are going through those different areas before you do it reopen, so that you're opening up with confidence.
Excellent, thank you for that. Keeping the staff safe and keeping the checklist right is one thing. What about checking the customers, Ruth? In terms of, it's difficult to screen your customers, but ensuring your customers have not got any symptoms is certainly something that that businesses should be doing.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, businesses should be asking their customers on entry whether or not they have any symptoms of COVID. We know that some businesses are planning on making use of thermometers. We have kind of put out some guidance on the use of thermometers, which we've given to the Chamber of Commerce and the JHA for circulation around members. Do be cautious about relying on temperature checks because you can very often get a false reading either way, and it can provide false reassurance. But certainly in the same way as when you go to your GPs and you're asked whether or not you've got symptoms of COVID, ask your customers if they have symptoms of COVID. And if they do, you should decline them entry.
Yes, Caroline.
And it's just extending that good practice through to the back of house as well. So asking your staff on a daily basis, even if that's filling in a sheet confirming then that they've not got any symptoms and no one in their household has got any symptoms. It's just that extra reminder. We've seen quite a number of cases where actually the individual has continued to go to work with symptoms, which obviously puts quite a strain on the individual's workplace. So asking people every day to say if they've got symptoms or the household has got symptoms, and if they have, getting them booked in for a symptomatic test, which they should get the results back that same day or very early the next day. So you're taking the risk away for your business. You've got that confidence and you've got that, although you lose that member of staff for a day, it's a day of knowing that they're coming back in safe, or otherwise if they do actually come back with having tested positive for COVID. It's just that layer of protection for you and your employees as well.
There's been a whole lot to think about when running a restaurant, when running a hotel, when running anything in hospitality. There's an awful lot to juggle, and this is just another layer of knowledge which is needed, and awareness which is going to be needed by those managers, by those owners. Simon, if people have got questions, then obviously, the Govt.je website and the new guidance is fairly clear on there. I think it's as clear as it possibly can be. We've obviously had 25 or so questions in this last hour from people, and we've discussed other bits and pieces and nuances of all of this as well. So if people need to reach out, JHA, Chamber, Government, there are some, there's advice available.
Yeah, Murray, I think as you and I have discussed, members are always free to get hold of either one of us, and they do take advantage of that right. And we will continue to encourage it. Everyone should have our emails, our telephone numbers. Emails allow us to forward it if we don't have the answer, and it can be a bit easier. But yeah, we're geared up and ready. It's hopefully going to be a positive week this week, and one that if you do need support, we're in place and ready to support you guys as well.
Well, listen, that's the fastest hour that I can remember. We've covered a lot of ground very, very quickly. We don't want to waste too much of the industry's time, because I know they want to get themselves prepped and opened. But Ruth, thank you very much indeed for giving us all that legalese in words that even I can understand. So thank you for that. Caroline, thank you as always for joining us on what has become now one of our regulars on the series of reopening. Soon there'll be nothing left to reopen. Let's hope that's the case. That's what we're aiming for. And Simon, what we really want here is a safe and continuous opening, so that this industry can get back to where it needs to be. It has been a long, long road for this industry, as it has for others, and there's still some to go yet. I know we're talking to the fitness industry and others, and that will evolve in the next week. But from your perspective, from the Jersey Hospitality Association, you must be delighted this is about to reopen.
Yeah, we're definitely moving in the right direction. I think I'm very much looking forward to getting to the end of this. I think the one bit that both you and I have discussed to no end, if this is done properly, if we come out and follow all the guidance very carefully, we will go through the transitioning period to being back to some sort of normal a lot quicker than if people try and push guidance. The guidance is there to allow us to move through this at the right pace. Let's not try and push ahead too fast, because that will result in a longer period before we get back to some sort of normality. You're muted, Murray.
The inevitability is, just as we're about to close, then you're going to see another question come in. So one for you, Caroline. Just for old time's sake, do customers have to put masks on between courses, after food, and after food has been cleared? So between courses and after food has been cleared, masks on would be your guidance or not?
Yeah, so it's an expectation that when somebody isn't eating or drinking, they wear a mask. So if there's a period of time between those dishes and those courses, then absolutely we would expect people to put those masks back on, and to limit the risk of the transmission of the virus, which is the point of all the guidance.
Limiting the risks of transmission is important to everybody. Thank you all very much for joining us. We are completely out of time. Thanks to everyone for joining us online. We look forward to the next web chat, whatever it might be on, but let's hope that everyone has a successful reopening in the hospitality industry, and that we can all enjoy going out and having something to eat. Until the next time, thank you all and have a good day. Bye-bye.